All right, welcome back to Unslaved, everybody. Glad to be back with you. And we've got a really great presentation for you today. We're going to be getting into all kinds of stuff. Very interesting. Michael, always good to see you. 50 slides. This is going to be a deep one. I'm really excited. What are we getting into today?
Yeah, well, I wanted to do a series actually on the roots of Christianity and Judaism, but this time something about a subject I've been studying since the early 90s, the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we're calling this the Dead Sea Scrolls Deception, and we'll do an intro today for those people who've never heard of this or have any clue about its impact and the magnitude of the discoveries of these old scrolls in the Dead Sea. They were centered around a little tiny community called Qumran, which is about 10 odd miles from Jericho, maybe about 14 miles as a crow flies from Jerusalem. It's on the west bank of the Dead Sea. And it's about 23 miles by road today. So this little, what on earth was this sect doing out there? What were they scribbling? And then, there was a discovery made of these scrolls in about 11, 12 caves. And this was back in the 1940s. And it had an enormous impact on what we know about the Old Testament and history in general. So I think it's one of the most fascinating subjects. We should definitely look into it for a number of reasons that'll become very, very apparent. So, yeah, we can maybe make a start right away. And this will be the intro itself. So if we go to the first slide, again, for people who've never heard of this, we're talking about a sect known as the Essenes. And they were the authors, this mysterious sect, monastic. So right away, they're monastic, an early Jewish sect. They were also fanatical. It comes out from their own writings. This was a group that had broken away from the main Jerusalem church in Jerusalem, which I said wasn't far away. So what on earth would a small sect do going out to some of the hottest places on the earth? The Dead Sea is the lowest elevation, and it's like an inferno. And some Dead Sea Scrolls scholars believe that the concept in Judaism of hell or Sheol actually comes from this physical location. That's how hot and inhospitable it is. So here we've heard of monasteries and monks, but my God, this is an unbearable place. Now, here's one of the strange paradoxes. The scrolls were preserved for 2,000 years, because of this arid, dry environment. So, wow, what can you make of that? It turned out that the environment, where the scrolls were buried in these jars, some of them were just thrown higgledy-piggledy. But the main thing is that they survived because of this arid desert. But in the introduction, what I want to bring out is that, let's go to the next slide. Even though they were called the Essenes, they themselves referred to themselves as the sons of Zadok and became known as the Zadokites. And this is most interesting because the Zealots, the famous Zealots, also were sons of Zadok. So the Zealots and the Essenes are related, and they were. But the point I like to bring out, because I'm the only one who's made this connection, and I do so in my Irish Origins books, is that this word Zadok officially relates to a strange character in the Bible called Melchisedec, who was given the title of high priest of his own cult, the Zadokites, later on. But who's this Melchizedek? Well, the Bible tells us very, very little about him. There's only one or two references. And one of the references is that he was a strange character that Abraham and his father, and his wife and Lot, as they were leaving Mesopotamia and moving into Palestine, into Syria, they met with this character along the way. Mysterious character. Melchizedek meets him and gives him the blessing. And I'm the only scholar out there who believes, controversially, that Melchizedek is a synonym He is synonymous with Akhenaten, the great pharaoh. Once you learn how to read the whole of the Old Testament, book of Genesis and Exodus, in other words, the Torah, when you read it with this in mind, the Egyptian connection, something that Sigmund Freud had also worked on, you see, once you open up this alternative, something needs to be made sense of. And I don't think we can proceed on anything to do with Judaism and Christianity until this, which I believe is a linchpin, is understood. So even though this character is barely described, I think he was an interpolation in disguise. He's not the only one, by the way, of this Pharaoh of Egypt, leader of the sun cult, leader of the Atenists, as they're called. And he was introduced into the story by the mythmongers to create a connection that clever people, insightful people would follow. But anyway, let's go to the next slide. Melchizedek, an odd character, and he's a stand-in for Akhenaten. Could you read that, David?
Yes. So this is from Irish Origins of Civilization, Volume 2.
Yeah.
The caves in which the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered yielded 13 fragments that make mention of a certain Melchisedec. Interestingly, the Zadokites trace their order back to this enigmatic character mentioned in the book of Genesis and Psalms, and who was supposedly a contemporary of Abraham, but whose ancestry preceded the time of the Levite priesthood. The name Melchizedek apparently means king of Zedek, king of Salem, peace, or king of righteousness. The term Zedek means justice. Zedek was apparently a deity worshipped at Jerusalem in early times.
So it's the rightful king, not just king of righteousness, that works. But it could also be translated as the rightful king, like somebody who's been deposed. Yeah? And they meet this guy in the wilderness? Okay. Nothing much is said about it. Just you meet some guy in the wilderness. Could he be the rightful king? Let's move on. What's the next one?
Yeah, continuing on, in the New Testament, Hebrews 5:6, Jesus is referred to as a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. In the same book, Melchizedek is described as being without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like unto the Son of God, abideth a priest continually.
You're right. So now they're linking up Jesus with him. First of all, they're telling you that there's an order of Melchizedek. Well, wait a minute. Now we got an order of Melchizedek? How come that's not footnoted? If there's an order of the guy, wouldn't you think, I mean, right? Abraham is now meeting not just a single person, but a cult, a sect. So that's nobody has ever inquired on that. Now they're linking up Jesus with him. That could be spurious. That could be myth-mongering. You know, this often happens where the myth-mongers do this. Or is it true? The character that we know as Jesus, was he really a priest in the order of Melchizedek? How many Christians know about that? What does that even mean? Vatican is meant to condemn secret societies. Well, okay, so much for that, right? Carry on.
It was the extremist Zadokites who desired their particular and largely political demigod to be ruler over all. Any person or sect who refused to serve their master stood to be utterly destroyed by his wrath. The militancy and fanaticism of the sons of Zadok is made evident from the biblical passages referring to Melchizedek.
Yeah, so there's that fanatical aspect. We already said, moving out to this lonely place in the desert, their beliefs, which all came out with these Dead Sea Scrolls. And this fanaticism is a key part. It can't be denied. And might have been one of the reasons why they left Jerusalem. They're not to be considered, friends of Orthodox Jewry, meaning that Orthodox Jews, they were happy, where they were in Jerusalem, following the Torah in their way. Yeah, this group was hardline. So one thing for beginners to realize is this is a hardline Jewish sect. And we have to start from there. Maybe they did have an influence on Christianity later, but let's understand it, from the off, because there's other groups out there like the Gnostics, and as we go, we'll talk more about groups like that too. But we need, and these were Gentile. You can also have Gentile groups, but this is not a Gentile group. Okay, this is a hardline Jewish sect. Let's go to the next one. Right. So this then hinges, because this is the case of what I just said, it means that there is this split then between Judaism and Christianity fundamentally, which lasts until this day. And that's between the doctrines that speak of a Messiah, a messianic character, and the Christ, which all Christians are familiar with, of course. Now, it's true that there are some Jews who've converted to Christianity. We've had Charles Moskowitz on here and others, and they're okay with that. But an Orthodox Jew, and certainly these hardliners, they don't know what you're really talking about. If you were to describe the supernatural Jesus, that doesn't work for them. They understand the Messiah as a kind of king who's going to come, and his duties are mostly political. He may come from God, but he's really from the seed of David. He's really something that is predictable in their culture, and he comes out of a kingly line, and his job is 90% political. So these hardline Jews would soon, they're Hellenized, and they don't like the Greek influence, and they don't like the Roman influence. The time we're talking, they're really colonized by Rome. They don't like that. And they don't like these Zadokites and Zealots and related groups. They don't like the fact that they see the priest of Jerusalem, the high priest, and a lot of rich Jews cavorting with these invaders. That's another part that needs to be, borne in mind. They break away because they're fanatical. I always think of them as sort of like the Antifa, or the Black Lives Matter kind of groups. And they have a big peeve against the orthodoxy, and that's why they move away. And of course, later on in other programs, we'll get into some of their doctrines. We won't get into that right now. But just the fact that they are fanatics, they hate everybody, and they would only look for a leader in sort of this political framing. Let's go to the next one. But of course, when we talk about Akhenaton, slash Melchisedec, whoa, stop, right? Right away, we're no longer talking about official Judaism, official Christianity. We're talking about sun worship, a kind of monotheism from where it belongs. We're placing monotheism, whether it was Judaic monotheism or Christian monotheism. Look, it all goes back, as we know and our members should know, to sun worship. And this then, of course, opens up many tangents. We won't explore it too much, but it certainly needs to be mentioned. If somebody like me makes a connection between an old patriarch of the Bible and a character like Akhenaton, we have stepped into solar worship. Let's go to the next one. See how relevant that is. Could you read that, David?
Yeah, this one's from Richard Proctor. Every detail of the sun myth is worked into the record of the Galilean teacher.
Yeah, and go to the next.
And from Thomas Paine, one of the founding fathers, the Christian religion is a parody on the worship of the sun, in which they put a man whom they call Christ in the place of the sun and pay him the same adoration which was originally paid to the sun.
Yes, next.
And then from Tyler Alcott, Sun Lore of